Hello, investors, and welcome to another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. Well, friends, we know the future-facing commodities are in a short-term oversupply, but certainly the long-term does look outstanding. But what we really want to focus on now are those companies with those projects that are truly going to get built, and they are not just hopes and dreams. And that's why I'm so glad today to be joined by Surefire Resources Managing Director, Paul Burton, because Paul's going to talk about their Vanadium project and how this is the real deal with a clear funding path and a clear strategic path to production. And with that, Paul, welcome.
Thanks very much, Greg. Good to be here.
Great. Hey, Paul, you do have a bit of experience. Maybe just share in a couple of minutes about yourself, a little bit about your history.
Yeah, well, I started off as a geologist. I originally working for Anglo American and De Beers, and worked throughout Australia in a number of projects, and then joined Normandy Mining with Robert de Crespigny through the 90s, and worked on a number of projects and discoveries there before moving into the more listed company, junior market, where I've been progressing through from CEO to managing directors to date.
Right. And Paul, I just want to ask a question also. Drawing on experience of being at the big end of town, again, I come back to this point of getting projects built. What did you learn there? Were there any certain learnings where you really could use those towards your junior exploration activities now to understand what companies are really?
Sure. I mean, there's no doubt that everything goes to the accountants, and if it doesn't work financially, then it's not going to work. No matter how good the grade is and how good the project looks, if it's at the end of the day, it's too expensive to operate. And operating costs was very much a focus with all the projects that I worked on.
Right. And I think that as a Surefire MD, certainly that's coming to bear and coming to you a lot of your experience. Now, Vanadium, some investors may or may not be that familiar with that market there. Can you just give us a little bit of an overview?
Yeah, there's some strong headwinds in the vanadium industry, and that's reflected in the price at the moment. It's around about $5.90 US a pound. Now that's close to approaching many existing producers' operating costs. So I think there's difficult time. In my view, the reason for this is that there's a strong connection to stockpiling that's occurred of the vanadium pentoxide, particularly in China, and the utilization of this into the steel industry in China. And as those reserves start to fall and dwindle, and more of that vanadium actually gets taken up into these mega vanadium batteries that China is also producing, and then I think you'll see a price correction. And I think it's just a matter of time before that occurs.
Right. Thanks.
Vanadium's really a element that has a unique ability to provide some hardening. So it's used traditionally in the steel industry as a hardening additive. So it goes into the reinforced bars. So that's where most of the demand and consumption occurs in the steel industry. But over the last few years, we've seen a growing interest into the renewable energy storage battery fields, the vanadium redox flow batteries. So that's traditionally where vanadium is set at the moment, and I think it has a very strong future from that perspective of the alternative energy.
Right, because that's the incremental growth category, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a sort of a year-on-year 6 to 8% growth in demand for vanadium in the steel industry as some of the buildings get taller and they're building in more and more different countries, higher in the earthquake zones, etc. All of these need more and more vanadium to go into the construction. But yet on top of that, now we have the future growth in the vanadium redox battery.
Got it. Now, specific to Surefire, Victory Board, your project, maybe give people an overview of it firstly.
Yeah, Victory Board is one of the largest vanadium projects in the country, if not the largest. It runs for over 21 kilometers outcropping. It's a very good grade. We're in a very good infrastructure area in the Midwest of WA, and we have a very good development pathway. We recently completed a pre-feasibility study on the project with very outstanding results, just under 2 billion NPV for Australian, and IRR of about 42%. So a very strong project in anybody's metric.
Right. And Paul, we were talking about it offline, and we're going to bring it online now, where there's one thing to have a big NPV compared to your market cap. There's another thing, and this is where you are hyper-focused, I can tell, is on delivery, whether it's not only operationally, but also be financially. Maybe just give us a little bit of a state of where it is. And also, you recently had an MOU announced with Saudi Arabia. Maybe give it a little bit of a background on that.
Yeah, so our pathway for development of this project is a bit different to some of the other traditional pathways, where we're having a low cost open cut mine operation here in Australia, which is one of the cheapest methods of mining, to beneficiate the ore, to extract the magnetite concentrate. Very simple process, and then we ship that offshore to a low cost jurisdiction. And in our case, we've gone down the pathway of using Saudi Arabia. Reasons for that is that they have one of the lowest potential operating costs for us in the world because of their low energy prices across the board, and also very strong incentives in the country for bringing in mineral processing projects. So that is our pathway. And as they have such a high incentive for bringing projects into the country, they also have a very strong incentive of financing these. So there's up to 75% of the capex available from the Saudi Development Fund for mineral processing, which is a huge step up for a project in this current market.
Right, because again, if they're going to provide potentially up to 75% of the capex, is this, in your experience right now, what you're seeing, and certainly what we're seeing here at 180 Markets, that is where a lot of projects are effectively getting stuck?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you have to go to commercial banks and go through those hurdles, then I think it makes it extremely challenging. There's all sorts of grants and things available, but at the end of the day, you need some very solid financial support to make a project get up and get into operation. And more importantly, once they're in operation, to stay in operation, not to be dead on arrival or their operating costs start killing you.
Right, absolutely. Now, with Saudi Arabia, what's also nice to see is you first engaged with them last year. You're already out to an MOU, which I believe you signed. We're filming here in late March. I believe it was about 2 weeks ago now. So clearly they've doing due diligence and they like what they see from Surefire.
Yeah, both companies that we've engaged with are very respected companies in Saudi. They've expressed strong interest in being part of this overall Saudi 2030 vision, which is this transition away from their dependence on oil and gas and moving towards more of a mineral processing hub that they want to create within the Saudi region. And they've certainly done the due diligence. They like the project. We presented it to them. And as I say, we've now had the two MOUs in place, which is extremely exciting for us.
Right. And also, and I think this point is worth highlighting, Saudi Arabia, it's more than just money. It's, as you said, it's part of their 2030 vision. So this is very strategic to them as well, isn't it?
Yeah, their 2030 vision has a mining pillar as part of that vision. And that mining pillar is something they never had before because they had the dependence on oil and gas. Mineral processing is one of the areas that they really want to focus on. There's a lot of exploration going on in country as well. They've opened up a lot of the country for exploration, but mineral processing is where they see them being a competitive hub, if you like, to the likes of what goes on in Asia and China and Korea, Japan.
Right. Hey, Paul, you're really delivering on results. You also have obviously a humongous NPV, as stated, for 2024 and maybe 2025. It's amazing to think we're already a quarter through the year here. What, in your mind, for shareholders are the big catalysts?
Well, we're going to work to the next stage with our partners in completing the final feasibility on the whole project. Part of that is that we actually announced that we have come across a new leach process that we can use to extract the vanadium. Now that's building into the whole big feasibility. So we're embarking on that process to make sure that it does scale up. So that there should be some very exciting news flow from us on that feasibility. The agreements with the Saudis, binding agreements. There'll be a number of opening doors once those occur, and all the other approvals that we embark on with the government to get the project operational ready.
Right, and this leach process, and in layman's terms, if you will, is it a process that is more efficient, that lowers the cost? What is it that makes it special?
Well, moving to Saudi Arabia, certainly we have a low cost operation because then we can keep our margin. But the other important factor about the project is that we produce more than one product. We're not just producing vanadium, we're producing iron products as well. Now, that's very important in these types of projects because essentially magnetite is mostly iron. So it's it's silly to waste this product. And most other vanadium mines around the world only focus on the vanadium, and everything else goes out onto the waste tip. So our process flow sheet shows that we can produce vanadium products, vanadium pentoxide, ferrovanadium, but also iron products, high purity iron, pig iron, which gets utilized directly into the steel industry as well. All of which I would say is also being used in Saudi Arabia at the moment because of their mega projects that they have on.
I
They
see.
need all these raw materials.
Right. And to fully utilize these extras, if you will, is it complex to separate them out?
It's not uncomplex thing that's tried and tested in the mining
Okay.
industry. So it's well understood how you extract them by solvent
Right.
extraction, and they go down their traditional pathways to produce the vanadium pentoxide and the high purity iron, etc. So it can be separated. Decade ago, very difficult. Now, very well understood.
Right. And it's glad to see it's not the first rodeo, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly right. No, wouldn't be the first project that's going to be separating different elements out for final products.
Right. Well, in your opinion, what do you think is misunderstood about Surefire? Because you really are, announcement after announcement seems to be positive, moving forward. Is there any misunderstanding, do you think, about the company?
I don't think there's any misunderstanding. Very hard for me to comment really on that. I think perhaps there's perhaps no focus on really what our final pathway is,
Right.
and comparing that to our peers who aren't doing an offshore processing. I suspect that may be a lack of understanding there, perhaps. But yeah, apart from that, I'm not aware of any issues.
Right. Well, as we hear, we see it as a tremendous opportunity because, again, when you see that valuation gap between your market cap, NPV, and also the pathway and now the funding pathway as well with Saudi Arabia there, it's really getting a lot of box tickings in a row. Paul, we do have to keep it short. Do you have any closing comments for the audience?
Well, I think sure. I mean, I think you mentioned the big disconnect there between the NPV and the market cap, and that I think is the real opportunity for investors if they wanted to look at the stock, particularly the levels that we're at. It's very easy to move the stock up from where we are. If we're at 50, 60 cents, then going from 50 to 60 cents is perhaps a tough ask when you're up there. But we're fully focused on the project, and the market will just follow.
Absolutely. Paul, stay in touch and please keep up the good work.
Will do. Thanks very much, Greg.
Bye-bye.